friend? It's Faraz Khan. On this episode, I talked to Dr. John Jaquish about his new book called Weightlifting is a Waste of Time, and So is Cardio. He talks about how to build muscle 3 times faster in just 10 minutes a day with his invention called the X3 bar. So if you're a busy person who wants a better body, stay tuned for an exciting interview. Dr. John Jaquish is a scientist, an inventor, and a Wall Street Journal best-selling author. He spent years researching and developing improved approaches to health. He's the inventor of the most effective bone density building medical technology, which is now partnered with Tony Robbins and OsteoStrong for rapid clinic development. He's the inventor of the X3 bar, which is a technology that is proven to develop muscle much faster than conventional weightlifting, all with the lowest risk of injury, joint injury. Dr. Jaquish's methods are used in training the world's most elite athletes and associations such as the entire Miami Heat organization, various NFL and NBA players, as well as Olympians. Hey everybody, today I have a very special guest on the show. It is Dr. John Jaquish, who is a prolific inventor of our times. He's not only invented the technology behind OsteoStrong, but also invented the X3 bar, which is a revolutionary new device for working out, gaining muscle in much quicker time. So we'll get into all of that in just a second. But first, I would like to introduce him to the show. Dr. Jaquish, welcome to the Anti-Aging Hacks Show.
Franz, thanks for having me.
Great. So I want to start off with your background because you have a very, very interesting story. And I want to walk through some of your interesting touch points in your story as you came to invent some of these technologies. So sure. For the listeners, if you would, please give us a background, your medical background of what you did after college and how you got into some of the medical devices.
It was really all because of my mother. My mother was diagnosed with osteoporosis. And I had just finished business school at the time. And so I was a little bit out of undergrad, but like I wasn't particularly, I was doing software sales for an enterprise, like relationship management, custom solutions kind of company. And I loved that job. That was fun. But it wasn't quite as satisfying as what I wanted to do, which I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just thought I could do something cooler than this. And my mom got diagnosed with osteoporosis. And then I read about side effects of some of the medications. And I was like, I don't like this. And my mom said, I don't like it either. So I said, just hang on. Like, let me see what I can learn about this. And as I started to learn, I determined that this is really just a dysfunction of disuse. So we normally, or children get high impact forces in the bone. Now, like weightlifting will never really trigger bone growth. It's not high level enough. I shouldn't say never. There's somebody out there, but basically the minimum dose response for triggering growth of the hip joint, bone and hip joint, which are where the fractures happen that end life or contribute to ending life early. You need 4.2 multiples of body weight to get any bone growth at all. So people don't lift weights with that.
That's a lot.
But they get it right. Mm-hmm. Like you're not going to find somebody that squats 4 times their body weight, and the leg sled doesn't count because most of the weight's going straight into the ground. You're at a 45-degree angle. It's like you can push a car too. It doesn't mean you can lift 3,000 pounds. Mm-hmm. So I just determined that impact was the only thing that ever did anything for bone. So I have to emulate high impact. I got to give the benefit of high impact without the risks. And so what I ended up doing was building a robotic system to adjust bars and plates so that people could contract against these bars and plates and then have a real-time feedback computerized system show them how much force they're putting through bone mass. And now those are the devices that you find at the OsteoStrong franchises.
And they're great. I've been to a couple of your franchises, and I got to know you first from Tony Robbins.
Okay.
I know a lot of
He's
folks
a
with
partner.
Tony. I'm sorry.
He's a partner in OsteoStrong.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been to a few of his conferences, and I've met Brian Bradley, who runs Egoscue or is a key in the Egoscue leadership. And so I got introduced to a lot of his partners, and that's how I found you. So, and I've been to one of your clinics, which it's these devices are great. You know what I mean? You get up there, and they're completely easy to use, and you put in, and they have memory, so you can put in your information,
Yeah.
and then they really load your bone with a lot of weight, which, as your research has shown, spurs bone growth and reduces the bad effects of osteoporosis. And what I've learned in this longevity journey is, especially when you get older and you fall or break a hip, I think if you're over 65, your chances of surviving more than a year is less than 40%. The numbers are.
You have a 50% chance of death within 1 year over 50.
Oh my goodness. So that's even
if you have a
less.
hip.
Wow.
And it's not necessarily the hip fracture that'll kill you. It's the complications. The surgery to put the hip back together. They got to split like a huge part of your thigh open. And you have almost the most blood flow anywhere in the body right there, other than like immediately around the heart. So it's complicated. Surgery, recovering from the surgery is an issue. The infections that people are susceptible to, how weakened they are after a really invasive surgery like that. So usually they'll get pneumonia or have some kind of complication and die in the hospital. People don't hear about that. There's actually as much death because of hip fractures, osteoporotic hip fractures, as there are with breast cancer. For some reason, it just doesn't seem as scary. Like people were like, "Oh yeah, my mom fell down, and broke her hip, and went to the hospital, and then she died of a complication." And I mean, I don't know. Dead is dead. So like, I don't want that to happen, or at least if it happens, I want a long time from now. So why is like breast cancer scarier?
Yeah.
Either way, you're dead. So So I think there's a little bit of an awareness problem, but of course the people with low bone mass, they're made aware. Yeah.
Okay. Just a personal anecdote. My grandmother fell down and broke her hip, and luckily she was in the statistic that died within a year. She lived, I believe, 15 years after, but her mobility was limited to 20 or 30 feet from where she sat every day. She couldn't move, she couldn't walk, she couldn't go out, she would go out in a wheelchair. It was really sad to see her in that state, so I would wish that on nobody. So with OsteoStrong, are you able to reverse? What are the results you're having with the devices in a lot of locations now?
Building bone mass. So it's difficult to really get away with saying, like, there are people who have osteoporosis, use OsteoStrong for a year, and then are no longer diagnosed with osteoporosis. You got to be careful when you say like this reversed, because you always get a physician say, well, you don't know. Is that? Well, nothing else does. So we kind of do. It's not like if you just start having, if you go vegan or something. Actually, veganism destroys bone. You really lose a lot of bone density. Being a vegetarian and a vegan. There's more than 20 studies that have proven that, and a meta-analysis that puts them all together. Just because of oxalates and the chronic inflammation. And then, of course, bones are protein.
Yeah, so if you're vegan.
Building blocks, then, well, there you have it. So, shame. But so it got to be, I like talking about bone health. That's how I frame it. Like, people improve their bone health. I don't really say like reverse osteoporosis. Well, that has been seen many times.
Okay. Dr. Jaquish, you've got a new book, Weightlifting is a Waste of Time. Tell us about this book and why you wrote it.
Well, while I was doing the research for the medical device, for the bone density device in OsteoStrong, I noticed that like humans are capable of incredible power in impact ready ranges of motion. So like when you trip and fall and you protect yourself from that fall, you brace for impact, you have a 120-degree angle between your upper arm and your lower arm. And the back of the hand is in line with the clavicle. Little kids, elderly people, everybody falls that way if they have time to react. So when that event happens, you look at what forces humans are capable of. And I knew this from the gymnastics research I first did before even building the prototype of the device. Impact, we handle tremendous amounts of force, well beyond what we like, 7 times greater than what we can handle in regular weight training. So tested the device with elderly deconditioned women, and they were using weights that full range wise a professional weightlifter wouldn't even touch. Wow. And 65-year-old women who've never exercised a day in their life. Now, doesn't mean they're as strong as those guys. It doesn't really mean anything from a performance standpoint, but what it does show is we've really missed out on stimulating the body completely when it comes to asking the central nervous system to build more muscle for us. And so because that really means we're underloading muscle and overloading joints. And which is why then ultimately I looked at, there's the anecdotal way of looking at it, but then there's a research way of looking at it too. The top leanest 1% of males in the United States is just under 11% body fat, which is not impressive at all. That's the top 1%. And 23% of males do strength training. Most of them do it at home. But like you look at those numbers and it's like, would you invest with an investment company that lost 99% of its money?
No way.
No, you're not. Would you buy a car that 99% of the owners had to send to the scrapyard because it just constantly broke down, couldn't be operated? You'd never buy that. But we go to the gym, and the fitness industry has a 99% failure rate. Why? In fact, you go in an average gym, I'm not talking about Venice Beach Gold's Gym. I'm talking about a regular, whatever, 24-hour fitness or something, in a regular place, let's say Fresno or something like that, Cleveland. And you walk into the gym and you go next door to the pizza place, the people don't really look much different. Pretty much everybody's fat. Pretty much everybody's tired. And by fat, I don't mean necessarily obese, but they're not in shape. So it's like, why would, at first I didn't really want to attack the whole industry. But then I thought, well, it's a total failure. It's probably the most failed human endeavor. I can't think of anything else that people habitually do that has a 99% failure rate. And I think it's actually worse than that, because really, how often do you see somebody that has a physique worthy of admiration? A performance physique. I don't mean just like pretty girl.
Yeah, rare.
I mean somebody where you're like, wow, that person looks like a statue. I mean, that's certainly not 1%. That might be 1/10 of 1%, maybe 1/100th of 1%. Here's something else for you. 1 in 6 males over the age of 18 have been on or are on anabolic steroids right now.
A lot of my friends.
Apparently, that doesn't work either, because look at the top 1%. They're not even, 11% body fat, because body fat's a great number because it takes muscularity into consideration. The more muscular you are, the more your body fat goes down by proportion. So what are we even talking about? If people see someone in shape and, oh yeah, they must take steroid. I get every fat guy with tiny, musculature is like, oh, everybody's on steroids except me. I'm the only one doing it right. No, your workout sucks and your nutrition is probably just as bad. So, and that's like the story for everybody, because they don't understand why weightlifting is so inefficient. And until I came along, there wasn't really a good way to stimulate muscle at all. And so when I went to develop, my first thought was, I'm just going to write a book. Just going to write a book about variable resistance and let people figure it out from there. And it'll be a bestseller and it'll be great. But then I looked at like sort of the do-it-yourself approaches to variable resistance. They were not practical. You'd have to buy all kinds of equipment, custom modify it. You have to pay somebody to weld this stuff. Like nothing was set up right. Nothing.
Would you explain variable resistance, Dr. Jaquish, to the audience? So there's obviously the fixed weight that we're all so used to in the gym.
Right. So you see somebody like in the NFL, they're benching 225. It's 225 at the bottom, it's 225 in the middle, and it's 225 at the top. When I do a chest press, it's 100 pounds at the bottom. It's 300 pounds in the middle, and it's 540 pounds at the top. And that is much closer to the actual curve of strength than anything else. Like your weakest in your muscles stretched position and your strongest in your muscles fully contracted position. Now there's leverage and kind of geometry that goes in there also. And that's different per movement, so I won't get into that. But we just needed, what we need is a weight that changes as we move. So we fatigue in accordance to what our capacity is. And then once we do that, that's a much deeper level of fatigue, much more intense stimulus. And as we know with sunlight or building a callus or any other adaptive response, the more intense the stimuli, the greater the response of the body.
Absolutely. And I know lots of men that have hurt themselves doing all kinds of crazy heavy exercises. Bench press seems to be common because every man wants to boast about how much bench they did last Monday, or, Mondays are usually bench days, at least in the circles that I run. But I personally hurt myself doing a military press a few years ago, and that took me out for a while.
Well, the shoulder has the most range of motion of any joint in the body. Mm-hmm. And putting heavy load on that is not a good idea unless you have a joint optimized, which is exactly how it works.
Mm-hmm. So your whole premise then, coming out of the studies that you did with OsteoStrong and your data, is that we don't want to use a fixed weight again when the muscle is the weakest, because that is the rate limiting factor. You can't go any higher where you could grow better. You could grow bigger muscles. You could grow stronger if you could have more weight when you can withstand the weight, right? At the portion where your muscles
changing, which means variable resistance. Like resistance becomes variable. And there's a couple different approaches to that, but I needed to come up with my own because the other ones that were out there were just totally ineffective. Like they were either too light or not. They were linear instead of like a force curve. So I needed something that would, the more extended, the shorter the muscle becomes. It wouldn't be like a 1-to-2 relationship. It'd be more like a 1-to-3 relationship.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your solution, if we may. You've invented this barbell and a set of bands that go with it that allow you to achieve exactly what you said, variable resistance, but getting higher when your muscles are stretched. How does that work, Dr. Jaquish? Please explain to the audience how this device works, the X3.
So it delivers force in accordance to your biomechanical capability. So the top of a chest press, you're capable of 7 times more force than you are at the bottom. Now, that would be like at an absolute maximum. So we dial that back a little bit. So it's more like X at the bottom and 5X at the top.
That's what the bar does.
Yep.
Okay. And obviously just
also, because the like the movements like squats and deadlifts and overhead presses, you basically have to attach the band to something that where the band can move freely underneath your feet. Mm-hmm. And so that's what the ground plate is for. Yeah. So like sometimes like people are like, well, can I just buy the bar? And it's like, no, like that's like, let me buy the car without the engine.
Right.
You need that.
Yeah. And so what you've done is you've supercharged this concept of variable resistance that we had with bands, with lighter bands, and you've provided a stable base and a sturdy bar that can handle the variable loads.
If you try to use like an actual appropriate for strength training level of weight band that we make, we're really the only ones that make bands that strong. Let's say you throw one around your back and just do a push-up with it. You might actually break your wrist because it's twisting your wrist. Mm-hmm. So you need the bar to keep your wrist neutral. Yeah. So like somebody will say like, X3 doesn't work because I tried band training once and it didn't work. It's like, well, this is not band training. Mm-hmm. This is way beyond that. Mm-hmm. This takes the shortcomings out of band training. I understand why people don't like band training. It sucks. Like you're either using a weight that's so low, it's not going to do anything, or you're using a weight high enough to twist your joints and injure yourself. Mm-hmm. Those are your two options: right. Injury or get nothing out of it. So, I needed to come up with something different. Mm-hmm. So this, great, and obviously you said this increases your muscle load when the muscle is the strongest, so therefore it leads to a much stronger muscle much more quickly. And you've listed a lot of studies in your book that prove that, right? Jump performance increases, your even sprinting speed increases, definitely muscles that you're working, those increase. So there's a lot of benefits to using this the right way. Yeah.
Okay. The other question I've gotten a few questions from people that I said I was going to interview you today. One question I got is, how does this do all the muscle movements that you would want to do, the complex, the simple, in a program?
Well, I mean, it gets every muscle in the body, but I don't want to know specifically what somebody's talking about. Like,
I think at the gym, they're used to doing, okay, I'm going to do a bench press, and I'm going to go over, do a squat, or I'm going to do a deadlift, or I'm going to do, a bicep curl.
Everything you mentioned is a movement we have now. I mean, hip adduction and abduction, that's not something we do, but that's also not really something the human body does. I mean, like when you run, do you flare your legs outward? No. I mean, is that muscle involved in running? Yeah, and you'll stimulate. It's involved in squatting too. But, some of the kind of sillier exercises that don't really mimic something we would actually do, they're not part of it. But also remember, like, the gym equipment business has been very good at convincing people they need more stuff because that's good for business.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple. It's like the basic barbell movements are all you really need as long as you're getting variable resistance with them. Yeah. Like, in fact, people do way better with barbell exercise than they do with machine exercise. And this is an amplification beyond that. So I think, like, why do you need a Cybex hip adductor and abductor? Because Cybex sells it. That's why. And they got a contract with your gym. And so, just because it's there doesn't mean it's good. Cigarettes are there. Are they good for you? Right.
Okay, let me ask you this. You've said that it's called X3 because it provides 3 times the gains. Can you explain that? 3 times muscle size, 3 times the strength. What does that mean?
Muscle size isn't really like a metric that's commonly tracked. Sometimes body composition change, but those are usually in like weight loss studies. Mm-hmm. So like when somebody's doing analysis on a strength training intervention, they're really more focused on power output as opposed, or I mean, some of them chase after EMG, which is fool's gold. You know, I mean, it's like activating a muscle and making a muscle grow are two different things, but a lot of people don't know that. So what was seen in the study that I'm citing of 3 times the gains was strength. But we know strength doesn't come without size in some regard. So it depends on how you built the strength. Is it more neuromuscular activation? Well, that's probably not going to result in any size change at all. But if it was either sarcoplasmic hypertrophy or myofibril hypertrophy, so there's really 3 ways to get stronger. It's those 3. It's the neuromuscular engagement, then sarcoplasmic and myofibril. We get the maximum of all 3, and then we see the muscle size gains also. But also there's people who, if they do, let's say they do X3, they got the best strength training intervention ever, and then they don't have enough protein to grow muscle. Well, they'll get neuromuscular changes. They'll be able to activate more muscle faster. So they'll see a greater strength output, but they won't gain any size. And some people want that. Mm-hmm. Like there's a gymnast, a male gymnast that we work with from time to time, and he's just not interested in putting on any size at all. So he really, really limits his nutrition, doesn't get enough protein, but trains just like, you know, somebody who would really like to gain some size. So then he just gets the neuromuscular adaptation. That's it.
Okay. You're obviously working with a lot of athletes. You're working with a lot of celebrities in their sense with the X3 bar. So Dr. Jaquish,
50 pro athletes. It's really funny. Like when somebody wants to say like, oh, this thing's a scam, or, you know, it's not good enough, or like Jaquish didn't go to a good enough university. It's like, I created a device that reverses a disease that kills as many people as breast cancer. And you want to talk about my school? Really? You think that matters at this point? Okay. Anyway, school was great. But you know, when somebody wants to shoot a hole in it, I really started doing a lot with athletes to really try and help the less intelligent people understand how superior this is, because they can't read research. And a lot of regular people can't read research either. Research is not written in a way so that the regular person can understand it. It's a lot of statistics. It's because they're trying to get a lot of information across to an already educated population, because what you want when you publish research is for someone else to take that research and reference it. Mm-hmm. You want your research to be good enough, interesting enough, make a point either one way or the other, because you're not supposed to have an outcome in mind when you start the study, right? Because researchers never do that. But you know, you're trying to prove one way or the other or something. And then when your study comes out, you hope somebody goes, you know, that I like that point. I'm gonna make that point and cite this study in my study, and the more citations you get, the sort of better you do kind of academically. Mm-hmm. You get sort of like street credit points sort of thing with professors. So when people didn't understand the research, I was like, well, I can work with a lot of professional athletes, give them personal help, and ask for an endorsement for free. Mm-hmm. I don't want to take any money for endorsements. I mean, yeah, sure, I could go pay Dwayne Johnson, you know, $1 million a year or whatever. Mm-hmm. You do it for $1 million a year, I'm sure. You know, shoot a couple.
Worth it. That'd be worth it.
That's for me. But if he's paid, it's like, what does it mean?
Right.
Like, hey, it worked for Michael Jordan and Nike, but Nike was already Nike.
Right.
When they hired Michael Jordan. It wasn't like they hired Michael Jordan and everybody was like, what's Nike? Oh, it's what Michael Jordan wears? Oh, okay. Like, they already all knew that. So it's not a good comparison. Because I get that, you know, with people who are trying to, like, help me market and stuff like that. I'm like, that's not a good. not a good analogy. But I wanted, where was I?
You were talking about athletes using the program.
Oh yeah, getting the athletes was really to help the people who either didn't have the patience to read the research or the intelligence to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And at least they could go, well, Dr. Jaquish is working with 12 NFL players and 40 NBA players and a couple of Olympians and Swedish soccer. And yeah, like pro athletes would not sign on to this unless it was a real deal.
Correct.
Like you don't see pro athletes endorsing, something silly that's out there.
Yeah, Pop-Tarts. Yeah, they don't do that.
Yeah, they're not going to waste their time. Right. They would never take the picture. They'd never even pick the thing up. So, that made a point where somebody would be like, yeah, when Dr. J is talking about science, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. But I do know like 3 guys on the Detroit Lions, one guy on the the best guy on the Pistons, my favorite bobsledder at the Olympics is using X3, and those guys, they're badass. Like they would not waste their time.
Oh, that is great. Congratulations on building.
Yeah, that made a big impact.
Yeah.
Because that was like, okay, I don't need to understand all this, but now that I know that all these guys also, now we have a couple of bodybuilders in there who are pretty open about not being natural athletes. But if you look at an NFL player, they're continuing to get bigger. They're drug free. Like they get tested all the time. And it's been a long time since they've not been able to get away with anything like that. And of course the punishment is brutal. Like, you lose a season. Well, most NFL players only last 3 seasons.
Right.
They retire because they get busted up. So sitting out a season is like, you might lose a third of your career. So they don't take that risk. They're not screwing around with that kind of stuff. So I like pointing that out. These guys are growing muscle already at being a high level. So being a high level athlete is harder to grow muscle.
Absolutely.
As a beginner, it's a lot easier.
Okay, let's talk about an average person that's, that wants to improve their body composition, wants to get stronger, that wants to lose some of the weight. You have a 12-week program that you've outlined on your website. Is that the recommendation for most people to start with X3?
Yep. And that's exactly what I do.
Okay.
At the end of the 12-week program, we explain how to continue. And if everybody imagines that because I'm really big and strong and lean and like I must do something differently. There's got to be a secret. There's no secrets. There's only science. And if you read the book and use the product as directed, I just quote the Mandalorian. This is the way. Like, if you don't want to listen to me drone on for an hour about why we do what we do, or read a 268-page book with 250 scientific citations, that's not what everybody wants to spend their time doing. Just follow the program.
Well, the book's a great read, and it's a quick read. Okay, so somebody gets the X3 bar.
It's a quick read for you.
True. That's true. Fair enough. Now, somebody gets the X3 bar and they want to start with the 12-week program. I think one thing that people get confused by is that I believe it's less than 15 minutes a day. Is that what it is? 10 minutes a day. And you do this 5 days every week, at least in the 12-week program, and you're done with your workout for the week. Just 10 minutes times 5. Right. That is just hard to believe for most people because they're used to driving to the gym and talking to their friends for 20 minutes and then actually working out for 40 or an hour and then coming back. So two hours is gone, and now they're tired just from going to the gym, right?
My now ex-girlfriend, we'd wake up in the morning and I'd be like, all right, I got a busy day, so I got to get my workout in. She goes, ooh, I'll watch. And I go, okay. So, I'd make my Imperium, which is like my pre-workout kind of, with a little bit of caffeine, a little bit of beta-alanine. And then I would start my workout. She'd go brush her teeth, and she wouldn't even do makeup or anything. She'd come out, and I'd be done. And she's like, I missed it. Well, I told you I was going to work out right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it's a long. So the reason it's like more like 15 minutes for me is because the bigger a muscle becomes, the more resources it takes from your heart.
Mm-hmm.
So, when muscles begin to get larger, this is where the myth that strength athletes have poor cardiovascular health. It's a myth. That's where that comes from. They actually have stronger hearts than marathon runners in some cases. There's about 100 studies on this and a meta-analysis that cites all those 100 studies, which I do cite in the book when I talk about how cardio is really not that great. You build your heart a lot stronger and build a lot more cardiovascular health, but that doesn't mean you can run a marathon better because that's very specific.
Right.
Like you actually want to weigh less, whereas a strength athlete, the central nervous system is trying to help you weigh more. Mm-hmm. So it's just very different training objectives, different stimuli in different responses. But like if I run up a couple flights of stairs and I weigh 240 pounds and I'm next to a guy who weighs 140 pounds, he's a marathon runner, he's going to look at me and I'm going to be like, after running up a few flights of stairs, and he'll go, well, your cardiovascular health isn't good. And I'm like, no, it's probably better than yours. I'm just twice your size. Like my Lamborghini doesn't have the same mileage that somebody's Prius does.
Right.
It's a lot faster, a lot more powerful. So it's just different.
Yeah. I want to come back to nutrition in a few minutes because I have a lot of pointed questions there because there's the two components, right? The workouts, the nutrition, and maybe sleep. So let's talk about how much muscle can a typical man that's following your protocol to a T, that's not an elite athlete, expect? Like what can people expect out of just 12 weeks?
12 weeks? Probably, not probably. I've seen it's 10 pounds of muscle. I've seen
10 pounds of muscle.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Wow, that's unheard of.
So the metric I really look for when I put like a before and after is, first of all, somebody needs to be comfortable sharing, a picture of them out of shape and a picture of them in shape with their shirt off. And because our target market is like busy executives, not a lot of guys want shirtless pictures on the internet. So there's a lot of people that say no. Sure. But like you're an investment banker. Do you really want a shirtless picture of yourself? No, it's not very professional. Right. But there's also a lot of people who are just cool, who are just like, yeah, I'm in awesome shape. I want everybody to see it. So I get it either way. So when somebody puts on 20 pounds of muscle in 6 months or less, we want them to share that story. And there's been a lot of people.
There's a lot of people putting on 20 pounds of muscle.
Right, which to most people is like their ultimate goal. Like they've already been working out 10 years to try and achieve that. And they haven't anywhere close. And they can do that in 6 months with X3, which is, and of course, the cost of the product has to do with how high a level of engineering it has to go through because of the heavy weights. Like you lift so much heavier with X3 than you ever would in a gym. People look at the picture of the product and they think they have it all figured out. Yeah. Well, you look at a picture of an iPhone. It's a piece of glass and a microchip. Should cost like what, $5?
Yeah.
There's microchips in all kinds of stuff. And glass, that's like free. It's like a beer bottle. Why isn't it $5? Well, because it's not that simple. That's why. Right.
No, the quality, the construction quality.
They need to learn something before shooting their mouths off, which is not a common trend on the internet.
True. Listen, as far as I can tell, just holding this, the construction quality is solid. Looks great. Just, there's.
It costs a lot to make one of those.
Oh, I imagine. I believe it. And it's made in America, right?
That's right. Yeah, the bands don't come from America. They come from Sri Lanka because we don't have enough rainfall to get tree rubber. Like that's organic rubber.
Right.
There's nothing we can do about that. But everything else made in America, made in California for the most part.
Oh, cool.
We have one really critical part that's made in Connecticut. Great company in Connecticut.
Okay, cool. So you obviously you look ripped, man. You look huge. Like, is this just X3? Are you on anabolic steroids? Like, what else are you doing on
No,
top of X3?
no, I take testosterone replacement therapy, but I had testosterone replacement therapy since I was 28 years old, and I'm 43 now.
Hmm.
So I didn't and I started putting on muscle when I was 40. So like I had more than 10 years of 12 years of TRT. It didn't give me any muscle mass at all. And I was working out the entire time. So, and I put this in the book. What's way more important than the anabolics in your bloodstream is the receptors of anabolics that are activated. And this is something that I don't know why it's ignored. I think it's like back to the whole, everybody thinks there's a secret.
Mm-hmm.
The reason so-and-so is big and strong is because of a drug. Well, I should take that drug.
Yeah.
No, it's because of their training, their genetics, the tendon positioning, which I told you is irrelevant with X3, but that previously determined a lot of, who was strong and who was not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at the point where I used to do some videos with Enhanced Athlete, which is a company run by Dr. Tony Hughes, is what he goes by, but Tony Hughes is his name. He's not an MD, he's an attorney. So he has a Juris Doctorate, but he's a great guy, and he ran this company, and then his partner in the business was Coach Trevor, and they kind of rearranged that company a little bit. But I used to do a lot of videos of them, and they're big advocates of anabolics, but also you checking with your doctor and doing stuff like that. They just really have this philosophy that anabolics are great and you shouldn't be afraid of them. And I would always make these arguments like how do you know you need that stuff? Like you don't.
Right.
And look at guys in the NFL. Look at people who have a really advantageous tendon layout. Why don't we focus on triggering the body to open up those receptors? Because you can flood your body with anabolics. And if there's no receptors that are active, all that's either going to go nowhere, you're just going to metabolize it, or it might go somewhere you don't really want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
Your cardiovascular system, enlarge your heart.
Right.
Or some other crazy shit.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point you bring up, because researchers believe that even hair loss in men is caused by the response to androgens, especially DHT, which is a byproduct of testosterone.
Right. I was lucky enough to have a lot of dihydrotestosterone receptors in my hair, which is why it all fell out, which is why I am gorgeous.
Right.
I have no hair. Lucky me.
So how does that apply to the rest of the body and muscle building in particular? How do you, an individual, they don't know how many receptors they have or how to turn them on? What is the right way that they can go about it?
I think it's chapter 3 of the book. There's no way, if you want to gain muscle, you will not escape heavy. You got to put extremely heavy loads on the body and show the muscle that it's not enough. It needs to be bigger. It needs to be more powerful. It needs to grow in all 3 regards: the neuromuscular pathway, the sarcoplasmic, which is really the volume, the fuel in the cell for sustained contraction, and then the explosiveness of the myofibril adaptation. Mm-hmm. You need to show your body. All you have in your body is your central nervous system. And the only way you communicate with it is put it in a harsh environment. You don't look in the mirror and go, well, we could really lose, 20 pounds, central nervous system. So do me a favor here. Just change the hormones a little bit and the receptors, and just get rid of this, extra fucking 10 years of pizza that I hate. That's not how it works. But you put the body in an environment where it's I'm going to get rid of this fat. Yeah.
Okay.
Then it'll do that. So it's about creating the right environment. Mm-hmm. And that environment is a 24/7 environment, by the way. You either need to be stimulating with heavy loading or recovering from heavy loading. That's it.
Okay. And in your program, obviously you target the push muscles on day one, and then you do a pull set of muscles on day two, which gives roughly about 2 days for muscles to kind of, heal from the damage that has been done.
Well,
and so
that's kind of a myth also. If you damage muscle, you recover from damage and you don't grow. That's like and there's a lot of research on this, like 4 really, really powerful studies where it shows when you don't receive damage, but you too fatigue the muscle, then you have growth. But if you have any muscle damage, the protein synthesis goes towards repairing the damage, not growth.
I see. So
my whole life, it's like, oh, you get, you damage the muscle and then it grows back stronger. Like, no, not how it works.
Okay, so it's not the micro tears in the muscle that are getting filled in that's causing the increase in volume.
Marathon have more micro tears than weightlifters.
True, and they're skinny and scrawny.
Yeah, they look terrible.
They actually do.
Sorry, marathon runners. Yeah, you don't look healthy.
They don't look sexy naked, I'll tell you that.
Anybody who runs a marathon does not do it because they're trying to enter a beauty contest.
No.
They're doing it because they like to run, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But, I don't think it creates the most pleasing aesthetic in a human body.
Okay. So let me ask you the most important question for the listeners so far is most of the listeners of this podcast want to live a long life and they want to look good naked, right? They don't want to be maybe, as muscular as you are as a professional athlete, but how do you look very proportionate and you have very little fat? How long does it take to get from where you're at to that position using the X3? And then how do you maintain that using the X3 as well?
I'm going to quote The Mandalorian again. Just get the 12-week program, and this is the way. But ultimately, get on the program and just keep going. Like, the longer you're on it, the leaner and stronger you get. And you don't need any alteration or changes. And there's something about fitness programs, and I don't know why people do this, but fitness programs are like Harley Davidson motorcycles. You know anybody who owns a Harley?
Yeah, a couple of people.
They're popular in LA. Yeah, it's like they get their bike, and then everything they talk about is how they're going to rearrange their bike.
Yes.
Like they're going to take this part off and a different part, and they're going to get this other part painted, which is normally not painted, and then they're going to get some extra chrome somewhere. And basically they take something that was designed to be like kind of sleek, kind of, well designed, and they actually made it shittier. But it's more like, look how I'm, custom did my thing, and you're like, yeah, okay.
Okay.
And like people want to do, like, they just can't wait to like get their program and go, I'm going to change like these 5 things, even though I don't understand any of the principles that are being used, and it's going to be better. No, it's not. You don't understand the principles, and you're going to change something, and you're going to disallow some of the big things that we're trying to trigger, and then you're going to get worse results. So just follow the program.
Okay.
If somebody's already like, an ACE certified trainer, which is like a hard not typical personal trainer certification. It takes like 2 weeks of clicking true or false on 2 weeks, like 2 hours, and like an online program. Like this is a very low bar for a lot of the certifications, but some of them are like almost like, getting like another degree. Like if you're ACE certified, that's a big deal. So if somebody really understands what they're doing, like some of the strength coaches that I talk to, the Miami Heat, they don't use weights. They just use X3.
Wow.
But they also do some drills that make them better basketball players. And they're guys who need to improve their posture to avoid injury more than they need bigger biceps. Because if they put on a lot of muscle that isn't used to get airborne, they're going to lose jump height. So, I tell the guys who are trainers in Miami Heat, it's like, well, the strength coaches, they're like, apply it where it will be applied best. And they can do little tweaks. I shouldn't mention any players' names because I kind of know some of the strengths and weaknesses of some of these guys, and they wouldn't be happy with me talking about that. But like there were a couple guys that had, upper back muscles, trapezius muscles that were just like violin strings, like tight and very almost atrophied. And, they had powerful calves and powerful quads because they'd been jumping all through high school, but they weren't working anything else. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you really you don't need to work on your bench press, but you probably need to do some serious deadlifting. You take that seriously because you don't want a neck injury. Somebody could hit you and you fall on a shoulder or something like that and snap your head sideways. Like you could tear a trapezius muscle, which could then pull your spine out of alignment, and you'd be in and out of alignment for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that would not be good.
Don't do that. Don't let that happen. And so, like, these are the people who might want to customize something, but I do exactly what I tell everybody else to do. I'm trying to maximize the power and size of every muscle in my body. I'm trying to be as lean as possible. And I'm trying to spend pretty much jack shit worth of time doing it.
Dude,
so I can have a life. I can go to parties. I can take trips.
I think that is music to everybody that's listening, or should be, for 10 minutes a day, maybe 15 if you're elite or you get to the next level. Your workout's done, and you can maintain physique like Dr. John Jaquish, which is very good physique.